First of all, let me say this. Donovan McNabb is unquestionably the greatest quarterback in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles franchise, in my opinion. I know the Randall Cunninghams, the Ron Jaworskis of the world and others, but I believe that Donovan McNabb to be the best quarterback in the history of the franchise. That's number one. Number two, I think it's appropriate that they're retiring his number. I think it's September 19th, I believe, number 5. No one else will wear that jersey. I definitely think that he's a nominee for the Hall of Fame, although I'm with Skip, when in doubt, do without. If there's a doubt as to whether or not he's going to make it, then he doesn't make it, at least as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I will say that despite all of that, his reputation is not as pristine as it could have been. Donovan McNabb was not only a great person, not only a great player, but a great person. And he was a character guy. And unfortunately, the one thing that will be held against him, believe it or not, is not just the Super Bowl, the absence of a Super Bowl championship, but essentially why it didn't happen. You know, people talked about the throwing up. I don't forget all of that. What I point to is the fact that as much of a headache as people tried to portray Terrell Owens as being, you are the franchise player. You are the quarterback. And you could have found a way to make that work, to find a way to get it done, to get over that hump. T.O. got hurt before the Super Bowl, near the end of the regular season, came back for the Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb's heroics got them to the Super Bowl along with Brian Westbrook and those boys before they lost to New England back in 2004, I believe. But the point is, it went downhill from there because of the friction between him and T.O., and once T.O. was gone, they never fully recovered because they never found anybody to replace him. And I look at it from the standpoint that Donovan McNabb was always viewed, and there's no other way to put this. I can only go by what the players said. He was viewed as a company guy. He told the company line. He said things, articulated things at their behest, on their behalf. And sometimes it was against what was perceived to be in the best interest of players. And when you have that reputation, particularly as a quarterback, the only way you can get away with it is if you produce Super Bowls, like Tom Brady has. I've gotten on Tom Brady in the past because I felt they could have taken care of Wes Welker. He could have spoken up, blah, blah, blah. But Tom Brady has nothing to prove because he has 3 Super Bowl championships and 5 Super Bowl appearances. But if you are Donovan McNabb and you have been devoid of that Super Bowl championship, again, he was a great player. He's a great person. His family's absolutely wonderful. All of those things are true. But considering how educated he is, how intelligent he is, how he had so much to say, to be a guy that always seemed concerned with not rocking the boat and towing that company line, it alienated a lot of folks and, more importantly, depreciated his value, not just in the football community, but beyond, because no matter what he was, we all know he could have been so much more in terms of impact. You have a lot of great athletes that have made a lot of contributions to their sport, but it's the impact that they had that made them a transcendent figure that really elevated their stature in our eyes. Donovan McNabb had a chance to do that and to be that. And in my opinion, based on what I've been told and what I have seen, he passed on that. That is a part of his legacy as well, even though I mean all the things that I say about him being a great player, great person, and all of that stuff.
Great Eagles quarterback, the best.
Yeah.
All right.
I appreciate everything you just said. I'm not as negative as you are about his legacy. Now, my Hall of Fame standard's extremely high. I would not put Donovan in the Hall of Fame for the reason you said, because I would have to think twice, and as soon as you think twice, you're out. These have to be no doubters, and there's doubt because obviously he didn't win the only one Super Bowl that he got to. But I'm here to make a case that his career became underrated and underappreciated because it ended so ingloriously with that playoff loss to Tony Romo at Jerry World. Remember that one? And then the disasters that were the seasons under Shanahan in Washington and then in Minnesota. Just a terrible way to end a great career. And it was great. 5 NFC championship games cannot be underestimated. And to do it in a city that did not believe in you on draft day.
Yeah, they booed him on draft day.
Yeah.
They booed him.
To overcome that, to win their hearts over, to fight through that, to be a high character man, to keep your chin up through some tough times. And you worked there for 16 years. You know how tough that city can be on that quarterback. Yeah. And he not only survived, he thrived in that city. And look, the Owens incident ended up damaging Donovan even more than it damaged Terrell Owens, which is just incomprehensible to me, because Donovan was blindsided by what I thought was the betrayal of his soulmate and roommate in camp. That's just me. Yeah. He was blindsided. He turned the other cheek publicly, and Stephen A. sits back and says, you got to be stronger than them. You got to stand up to this. You got to take the reins here. Take back over your football team.
Not just that, because you have to understand and consider the circumstances. As a reporter and a columnist working in Philadelphia for 16 years for the Philadelphia Inquirer, I covered Donovan McNabb. I was in the middle of that whole T.O. Donovan McNabb fiasco. And T.O. didn't do everything right, which he later admitted. But the point is that if you're Donovan McNabb, number one, that was your best weapon. Number two, you had a Super Bowl championship on the line, and you know that year. But if things worked out, you got to remember what T.O.'s thing was. T.O. wanted Donovan's support. Donovan said, "I don't get in the middle of stuff like that. No foul, no problem, no harm, no foul." But then immediately turned around and helped his best friend, which was Brian Westbrook. And so when you do something like that, it resonates throughout a football team. Your position has to be consistent. And that's why I defended T.O. on that particular nugget. Because, again, if you don't want to get involved, you don't want to get involved because that's your position. But when you change your tune just because somebody is your friend, what are you saying about this dude? He's not. And as a result, you're going to alienate him. These are the kind of things that you have to take into consideration. And so, fair or unfair, there are a lot of times when people were imploring Donovan McNabb because of his intellect, his upbringing, his values, his character. Why do you sit on the side and say nothing? If nothing else, you should be one of the first to speak up, because not only do you have the cachet and the credentials, but more importantly, you have the substance behind it because of who you stand for. And the fact that he was so quiet resonates with a lot of people. That's just the way it goes.
And the bottom line to this is Andy Reid chose to trade him to a division rival. And I think that burned some of the bridge in Philadelphia. That lost some ultimate respect.
Okay.
He added that he was ready for the fans not necessarily to welcome him when he announced his retirement, but he was moving on.